What happens when the very person who fights and advocates for others can't protect herself? February 20th, 2009. A morning that began like any other in downtown Baton Rouge. The legal district stirring to life as attorneys and paralegals filtered into their offices, preparing for another day of justice. But at one law office, something was terribly wrong. After receiving a 911 call from Greg Harris reporting his wife hadn't come home, police officers arrived at Chiquita Tate's downtown law office. What they discovered would shock even veteran officers: a crime scene of extraordinary violence. There, on the floor of her own office, lay 34-year-old criminal defense attorney Chiquita Tate. Her body, stabbed over 40 times, told the story of a violent, personal attack. The same hands that once confidently carried legal briefs defending the underprivileged now lay still, her diamond engagement ring and wedding band still on her finger, her Tag Heuer watch still on her wrist. Nothing stolen except a Gucci wallet. No signs of robbery. Just rage, written in blood. She was feared in the courtroom, Prosecutor Prem Burns would later say. When we saw her name on a case, we knew we were in for a fight. Yet somehow, this woman who commanded respect in legal chambers, who stared down hardened criminals without flinching, had been silenced forever in her own sanctuary of justice. As Detective Elvin Howard Jr. noted, this killing was an overkill. There were stab wounds and injuries on the victim's body that were not necessary. They occurred after death. If this is your first time here, subscribe to join our community seeking justice through awareness. Together, we examine these cases not for entertainment, but understanding, because education is our strongest weapon against violence. The story of Chiquita Tate isn't just about murder. It's about the masks we wear, the secrets we keep, and how domestic violence can infiltrate any life, even those we least expect. Long before Chiquita Tate became known as the ghetto superstar lawyer in Baton Rouge, she was just a girl with dreams from Chicago's South Side, a neighborhood where success stories were rare and obstacles abundant. Born into a family without a father, Chiquita's early life was marked by struggle. Her sister Danita recalls, "My mother got on drugs, leaving the children to find their own way forward." Despite these challenges, Chiquita's natural talents were evident from an early age, particularly her gift for articulation and argument. "My grandfather used to tell her when she was growing up, 'With that mouth, you better be a preacher,'" Danita remembers with a smile. Or, "With that mouth you have, be an attorney." And an attorney she became. With fierce determination and natural intelligence, Chiquita set her sights on law school, understanding education would be her pathway out of hardship. For her family, she represented hope, a chance to break cycles of poverty and addiction through sheer force of will. The path to Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge wasn't easy, but Chiquita's academic abilities made her a standout candidate. Her sister proudly notes, "It was easy. She passed the bar on the first try." Law school revealed Chiquita's natural talents in the courtroom. She embraced her identity so completely that she even had Lady Justice tattooed on her back, a permanent symbol of her dedication to the profession she loved. In the courtroom, Chiquita quickly developed a reputation that made prosecutors nervous. First Assistant District Attorney Prem Burns, who often faced Chiquita across the aisle, described her presence. When she walked into a courtroom, it was like she took over. She owned it. You could hear the shoes and the sound of the shoes walking in. After graduation, Chiquita built her practice representing clients others might avoid, including those facing serious criminal charges. She became known for her fearless advocacy, particularly for defendants from disadvantaged backgrounds. She was not afraid of the tough, her sister Danita, who worked as her legal secretary, explains. She had some tough clients. Some of her clients have been described as among the most ruthless criminals out there, coming from gangs. And they loved her. One such client was Denarius Dina Duhart, accused with his brother of beating and burning a man to death. "She said she was going to get me out, and she did," Duhart later said. The charges were ultimately dropped when a key witness in the case died. By her early 30s, Chiquita had transformed from that determined Chicago girl into a legal force, the attorney defendants wanted and prosecutors dreaded. She had become exactly what her grandfather predicted, a powerful voice for those who needed one most. Chiquita's personal life took an unexpected turn when she met Greg Harris, a construction worker who drove a Mercedes. According to her sister Danita, their first encounter was anything but romantic. Supposedly they met in real life. He cut in front of her and she cursed him out. And that's how he met. Despite this unusual beginning, Greg's charm quickly won over the typically guarded attorney. She was like, "That was the perfect guy," Danita recalls, though her tone suggests skepticism rather than endorsement. The relationship progressed rapidly. Greg, with his confident demeanor and financial stability, seemed to complement Chiquita's professional success. At the time, Chiquita was flush with cash from a recent case, a $500,000 settlement that had boosted her already thriving practice. Their courtship was brief, culminating in a wedding that raised eyebrows among those who knew Chiquita best. Even during the ceremony, there were hints of trouble. The preacher said he told them, "If it is not what you want to do, don't do it," Danita remembers. When asked if her sister had shown apprehension before the wedding, Danita acknowledges, "All right," but when questioned if Chiquita was truly in love, her response is tellingly hesitant, "I guess she was." Not exactly a ringing endorsement from the sister who saw Chiquita every day, working alongside her as her legal secretary. The contrast between Chiquita's professional and personal lives grew increasingly stark. In court, she remained the same fierce advocate, commanding, articulate, uncompromising in defense of her clients. Judges still deferred to her legal expertise. Prosecutors still prepared extensively when facing her. But behind closed doors, a different dynamic was emerging. Just 6 weeks before their wedding, police responded to a disturbing 911 call from their home. The police radio transmission captured the gravity of the situation. Her fiancé is beating her. This incident, a preview of troubles to come, revealed the painful contradiction in Chiquita's life. The woman who fearlessly challenged authority in professional settings was, in her private life, becoming a victim of the very type of violence she fought against in her career. As Chiquita and Greg's marriage progressed, subtle changes began to appear in the once unstoppable attorney's behavior. Colleagues noticed she became less available, often canceling plans or missing events that had once been priorities in her professional life. The 911 call made before their wedding was just the beginning. Though public records don't reveal the full extent of what happened that night, the police radio transmission, "Her fiancé is beating her," paints a disturbing picture of violence that contradicted Chiquita's public image as a powerful advocate. In a telling moment captured on video just hours before her murder, Chiquita was interviewed by a local news station about a case. When asked how to spell her name, she responded, "Chaquita," then added, "Tate, add Harris to Tate with hyphen." The reporter asked who she meant, and Chiquita replied, "My husband," before quickly adding, "He'll have a fit." This brief exchange revealed her awareness of Greg's controlling nature and her fear of his reactions, even to something as simple as how she presented her name professionally. The psychological burden Chiquita carried must have been immense. As an attorney who regularly represented victims of violence, she understood the dynamics of abuse better than most. She knew the resources available, the legal protections possible, and the warning signs of increasing danger. Yet like many victims, regardless of education or professional status, she found herself unable to apply this knowledge to her own situation. The shame of being a victim when you're known as a fighter creates a powerful barrier to seeking help. "I had always seen her as the warrior, the aggressor, the one who was strong," prosecutor Prem Burns would later reflect. Here she was, vulnerable. This vulnerability was carefully hidden from most who knew her. In court, she maintained her reputation as the ghetto superstar lawyer, who commanded respect and struck fear in prosecutors. But those closest to her began to notice concerning patterns. According to court testimony, Greg's control extended to monitoring Chiquita's whereabouts and questioning her late nights at the office. The relationship had become increasingly strained, with Chiquita reportedly telling her sister that the marriage was over shortly before her death. The contrast between her public strength and private vulnerability created a psychological prison as effective as any physical restraint. The woman who fearlessly faced down the legal system found herself trapped in a cycle of abuse she couldn't escape, despite knowing exactly what was happening to her. As prosecutor Prem Burns would later say during the trial, this case is about ownership. Greg Harris believed he owned Chiquita Tate, her body, her career, her finances. Have you ever noticed someone in your life gradually change after entering a relationship? Perhaps they became less available, seemed anxious about their partner's reactions, or showed subtle signs of fear. These changes might be more than just new love. They could be warning signs of control and abuse. If you're finding this story valuable, please hit the like button to help others discover it. Your simple click could connect this information to someone who desperately needs to recognize these patterns before it's too late. By early 2009, there were signs that Chiquita was preparing to end her marriage to Greg Harris. According to her sister Danita, who worked as her legal secretary, Chiquita had begun making comments suggesting she was ready for a change. She was like, "I don't think I could do the marriage thing," Danita recalls from one of their final conversations. And I was like, "Girl, whatever," and I hung up because she always say that lately during that time. While we don't have explicit evidence of Chiquita consulting divorce attorneys, her professional knowledge as a lawyer would have given her clear understanding of the legal steps needed to end her marriage. As someone who helped others navigate the legal system daily, she would have known exactly what documentation to gather and what preparations to make. The night of February 19, 2009, Chiquita was working late at her office in downtown Baton Rouge, preparing legal briefs for upcoming cases. According to testimony, she called her sister that evening, but Danita was home sick. Their brief conversation would be their last. That same evening, Greg Harris came to her office, bringing her dinner. He started assisting her with shellacking her shelves because she was doing some upgrades in her office, according to case reports. During this time, one of her clients arrived to bring money for a case. Greg went downstairs, propped the door open, collected the money from the client, and returned upstairs to give it to Chiquita. At some point, Greg told Chiquita he was tired. She reportedly responded, "Well baby, just go on home. I got this. I'll be home later." Chiquita never made it home. What Chiquita may not have fully appreciated, despite her legal expertise, was that she had entered the most dangerous period in an abusive relationship. Statistics consistently show that the risk of homicide increases dramatically when a victim attempts to leave their abuser. The control that defined their relationship was beginning to slip. Her comments to her sister about not being able to do the marriage thing suggest she was voicing her intentions more openly. If Greg sensed she was planning to leave, the threat to his control would have intensified. For abusers, the prospect of losing control often triggers extreme reactions. The very steps that victims take toward freedom, consulting attorneys, setting aside resources, confiding in others, can inadvertently increase their danger if the abuser becomes aware of these preparations. Chiquita's professional knowledge of the legal system may have given her confidence that she could manage the process of leaving. What she couldn't control was Greg's reaction to losing his grip on the successful attorney he had married. Chiquita's story shatters one of the most persistent myths about domestic violence, that it only happens to certain types of people. The reality is that abuse crosses all boundaries of education, wealth, profession, and status. People often ask why victims don't just leave, explains Dr. Rebecca Thornton, domestic violence researcher. This question fundamentally misunderstands the complex psychology of abuse. Victims stay for numerous interconnected reasons. Financial dependence is common. Abusers often control bank accounts, damage credit scores, or interfere with employment. Psychological manipulation creates profound doubt, with victims believing they deserve the treatment or can't survive alone. Perhaps most compelling is fear. Statistics confirm this fear is rational. When victims attempt to leave, violence typically intensifies. A Department of Justice study found that 75% of domestic homicides occur during separation or after the relationship has ended. The pattern of abuse follows recognizable stages regardless of the victim's background. It begins with isolation, separating victims from support networks through criticism of friends and family, creating scheduling conflicts, or manufacturing emergencies that prevent social engagement. Control increases gradually. Financial monitoring, digital surveillance, and dictating personal choices about clothing or appearance may seem like protectiveness initially but serve to establish dominance. Physical violence rarely begins immediately. Instead, it emerges after emotional bonds and isolation are established. The violence typically follows a cycle: tension building, explosive incident, followed by apologies and promises, a period victims often describe as walking on eggshells. Even highly educated professionals like Chiquita can become trapped in these cycles. In fact, their professional success can create additional barriers to seeking help. High-achieving individuals often feel exceptional shame, notes trauma counselor Martin Reeves. They think, "I'm too smart for this to happen to me," or worry about professional reputation if the abuse becomes public. Warning signs to recognize in relationships include unusual urgency in relationship progression, jealousy framed as devotion, gradual isolation from friends and family, monitoring of communications and whereabouts, financial control or questioning of purchases, mood shifts and unpredictable anger, diminishing self-confidence in the victim. Most critically, understand that domestic violence is about power and control, not anger management or substance abuse, though these may coexist. Abusers make calculated choices about when, where, and how they exert control, often appearing charming and collected to outsiders. This information could save lives, perhaps your own or someone you care about. Recognizing these patterns early might prevent another story like Chiquita's. Share this video with someone who needs this knowledge, because education is our strongest weapon against the silence that enables abuse. February 19, 2009 began as an ordinary workday for Chiquita Tate. That evening, she was working late at her downtown Baton Rouge law office, preparing briefs for upcoming cases. When Chiquita didn't return home that night, Greg called her sister Danita twice in the middle of the night. He was like, "Is your sister there?" Danita recalls. I say, "Why would she be here this time of morning?" When Danita tried calling Chiquita and received no answer, she grew concerned. The following morning, February 20th, Greg Harris called 911 after allegedly going to check on Chiquita at her office. "She didn't come home from a late night at the office," he told the dispatcher. "We've been calling and calling. Everybody was calling her. Nobody can get a hold of her." When police and Danita arrived at the scene, they found the office surrounded by yellow crime scene tape. "I saw the paramedics outside," Danita remembers. "I immediately told my husband, she dead." What investigators discovered inside the office was a scene of extraordinary violence. Prosecutor Prem Burns, who rushed to the scene after hearing about an attorney's murder on the radio, described her reaction. "I remember putting booties on my stiletto shoes, gloving up to go up there, and to stand over her and to look at this fellow attorney, member of the bar, killed in her own office. That was just heartbreaking." The crime scene was so bloody that much of it couldn't be shown in court. Blood smeared the walls and soaked the carpet. Chiquita had been stabbed over 40 times, with wounds concentrated on her face, neck, and torso. This was not like she had been stabbed 3 or 4 times, Burns explained. Her face was cut repeatedly as if to disfigure her intentionally, to say, "Okay, you think you're so good, you think you're beautiful, you think you're better than I am, let me show you." Detective Elvin Howard Jr. noted, "This killing was an overkill. There were stab wounds and injuries on the victim's body that were not necessary. They occurred after death." Most telling were the crime scene details that didn't fit a random attack or robbery. Chiquita still wore her diamond engagement ring, wedding ring, Tag Heuer watch, and diamond stud earrings. Her car keys remained in the office. There was no rifling through her personal files. The only item missing was her Gucci wallet, which would later be found discarded on Gardere Lane, one of Baton Rouge's roughest streets. Strangely, all her credit cards remained inside the wallet when it was discovered. Perhaps the most mysterious evidence was found in Chiquita's hand. A clump of hair, approximately 91 strands, woven through her fingers in what investigators described as a very odd way. As one detective noted, Had she been fighting and pulling the hair out of somebody's head? If you're fighting another female or even a male and you take 91 strands of hair out of their hand, they'd be really stupid after the killing to leave that. The positioning of the hair appeared staged rather than the result of a struggle, adding another layer of calculation to an already brutal crime. Detective Elvin Howard Jr. arrived at the crime scene and immediately noted Greg Harris's unusual behavior. At that time, he was pretty upset, Howard recalled. He was yelling back and forth at the uniformed patrolman that was there. When asked if this seemed like typical behavior for someone whose spouse had just been murdered, Howard responded, "He appeared to be upset, and I guess I felt it was kind of overboard." Following standard procedure, detectives took Greg to the station for questioning. For nearly 2 hours he sat alone in the interrogation room, the camera recording his apparently distraught state as he spoke to a friend on his cell phone. "Not too good, man. Not too good." Greg's initial statement claimed a simple timeline. He brought Chiquita dinner, helped her shellac shelves, then left when he grew tired. When she didn't return home, he went to check on her the next morning and called 911 upon finding the office locked with lights still on. As investigators dug deeper, contradictions emerged in Greg's story. He claimed Chiquita had asked him to bring food from a McDonald's near their home in Baker, a suburb about 40 minutes from downtown Baton Rouge. "Any burger like that and fries are going to be very cold," noted one investigator. There was a McDonald's a couple of blocks from her office. That struck me as being strange. Chiquita's sister Danita added another inconsistency. "My mother worked at Wendy's. She said Kata came to Wendy's and she gave her food free that day from Wendy's. That very same day. I didn't see any Wendy's food, which meant she ate the food." Most suspicious was Greg's immediate assumption that something had happened to Chiquita. As one detective questioned, "Why would you suspect something happened?" The physical evidence began mounting against Greg. During a search of his vehicle, investigators located sunglasses that were under the seat. They're safety glasses. "We can see blood spatter on the glasses." When questioned, Greg claimed he had cut his finger at work. However, a lot of construction companies, when you injure yourself, even if it's a small injury, you're supposed to report it. We checked with his company and found out that he didn't make any reports of any injuries. The most damning evidence came during an intense interrogation where detectives employed a clever tactic. They suggested to Greg that cameras along the highway had tracked his movements to Gardier Lane, the location where Chiquita's wallet was found. "We just let him know that there are cameras all over the place, so you might as well be honest with us," Detective Howard explained. Though the cameras weren't actually working, the bluff succeeded. Greg suddenly changed his story. "I just basically asked him, 'When is the last time you've been on Gardier Lane?' He was like, 'Gardier Lane? Gardier Lane? Oh, I went there last night.'" This admission placed Greg precisely where Chiquita's wallet was discovered on the night of her murder, directly contradicting his earlier statement that he went straight home. Join the conversation in the comments below. Have you noticed these warning signs in relationships around you? The controlling behavior, the inconsistent stories, the excessive reactions? Your awareness could help someone recognize danger before it's too late. The mystery of the hair clutched in Chiquita's hand continued to puzzle investigators. Forensic analysis revealed something unusual. Approximately 91 strands of hair were woven through her fingers, in a very odd way. As one detective observed, had she been fighting and pulling the hair out of somebody's head? If you're fighting another female or even a male and you take 91 strands of hair out of their hand, they'd be really stupid after the killing to leave that. The investigation took an unexpected turn when an anonymous tipster called multiple times claiming Chiquita was involved in a lesbian love triangle with a client. This person overheard them while at Chili's eating, saying that she killed Chiquita, Detective Howard recalled. When investigators tracked down the women in question, they quickly determined they had nothing to do with the murder. They loved her. They spoke so highly of her, Howard said. More importantly, they didn't match the physical evidence. One had short hair, unlike the long strands found in Chiquita's hand. The real bombshell came when detectives traced the anonymous calls to an address in Denton, Texas. After persistent investigation, they made a stunning discovery. The tipster reveals Yes, I know Chiquita Tate. She was married to my brother, Greg. DNA evidence provided the final piece of the puzzle. Tests on the blood-spattered safety glasses found in Greg's car confirmed what investigators suspected: the blood belonged to Chiquita. My boss called and said there's a DNA match to her husband, Prosecutor Prem Burns recalled. I got on the phone with the crime lab and they went, "Yes, there is her blood we just found on some safety glasses." And they were like, "It's her DNA on his glasses." I said, "I don't need any more than that. Run with this case." The forensic analysis of the hair clutched in Chiquita's hand revealed another deception. The forensic analyst noted the hair appeared to him just to have been cut as a serrated straight across, as if with a pair of scissors, which is not something as a result of a tussle or a fight. Prosecutors believed this was Greg's attempt to frame a woman for the crime. What better thing to do if you're a male and you've killed her than to make it look like a woman is responsible for this killing? Greg Harris's trial began with a striking image: the defendant strolling into court like he was a celebrity, as Prosecutor Prem Burns described it. Every day he came into court he would dress like Mr. GQ. He would have his sunglasses on, a beautiful suit. Very nice-looking man, very elegantly holding himself. This carefully crafted appearance seemed designed to convey innocence. It was like, "Look at me, I couldn't have done this," Burns observed. But the evidence told a different story. For 16 days, jurors heard damning testimony about the physical evidence connecting Greg to the murder: the blood-spattered safety glasses found in his car, the suspicious scratches on his body consistent with a woman's fingernail, just kind of half-moon shaped as if she had been digging into his hands, and the Clorox bottle top that had a mixture of Greg's and Chiquita's blood. The most compelling moment came when prosecutors played the interrogation video showing detectives tricking Greg into admitting he had been on Gardere Lane, where Chiquita's wallet was found, the night of the murder. "I remember the reaction of the jurors when they saw that portion of the tape," Burns recalled. "They were kind of like, okay, gotcha." Despite the overwhelming evidence pointing to second-degree murder, the jury returned with a verdict of manslaughter. "We were very upset," Burns admitted. "We all argued either he did it or he didn't do it, and it was very clear." The defense attorney never argued manslaughter. Nevertheless, the judge recognized the brutality of the crime, sentencing Greg Harris to 40 years at hard labor, the maximum possible for manslaughter in Louisiana. Greg's defense team filed an appeal, suggesting that the Duhart brothers, Chiquita's clients accused of murder, might have been responsible. If you track the accusations against them, if you've read their police reports, they clearly were sophisticated enough as criminals to do that, argued defense attorney Lance Ungillespie. The appeal was later dismissed. Today, Greg Harris remains behind bars, having never admitted his role or shown remorse for Chiquita's death. As Burns noted with grim satisfaction, he will be an old man. His life will be over by the day that he's released. For Chiquita's sister Danita, questions remain. "If he really did it, I have forgiven him, but I still want to know what happened and why," she says, echoing the sentiment of many families affected by domestic violence, the need for answers that may never come. In the years following Chiquita Tate's tragic death, her memory has been transformed into a force for positive change in Baton Rouge and beyond. The legal community that once admired her fierce advocacy in the courtroom now honors her through the Chiquita Tate Legal Fellowship, established to support aspiring attorneys from disadvantaged backgrounds who share her passion for representing the underserved. "She was the ghetto superstar lawyer," her sister Danita recalls with pride. "That's how we want her remembered, not as a victim, but as the powerful advocate she was." The fellowship provides financial support, mentorship, and practical experience to law students at Southern University Law Center, where Chiquita herself discovered her calling. The fellowship recipients are selected based on academic excellence and demonstrated commitment to criminal defense work, qualities that defined Chiquita's own career. Each year, a new cohort of Tate Fellows enters the legal profession carrying forward her legacy of fearless advocacy. Beyond the legal sphere, Chiquita's story has sparked important conversations about domestic violence in professional settings. The Chiquita Tate Foundation hosts annual awareness events, bringing together legal professionals, domestic violence experts, and community members to discuss how abuse can affect anyone, regardless of education, profession, or status. What happened to Chiquita shattered the myth that domestic violence only happens to certain types of people, explains one Foundation board member. Her story reminds us that behind closed doors, anyone can be vulnerable. Each February, on the anniversary of her death, colleagues and community members gather for a candlelight vigil outside the downtown office building where she practiced law. The event serves as both a memorial and a call to action, encouraging attendees to recognize warning signs and support those who may be suffering in silence. Prosecutor Prem Burns, who promised justice while standing over Chiquita's body, continues to speak about the case at legal conferences nationwide. I tell young prosecutors that domestic violence cases require special attention because the victims are often silenced long before they're killed. To honor Chiquita's memory, subscribe to True Crime Tales, where we bring awareness to stories that matter. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. They provide 24/7 support, safety planning, and resources, because no one should face abuse alone, regardless of their profession, education, or status. Remember Chiquita not just for how she died, but for how she lived, with courage, determination, and an unwavering commitment to justice.